Great to see you. And we're going to have a great month. And today starts off this series about our personal purpose. So you know at KCA, we have our phrase where we want to live by faith, be a voice of hope, and be known by love. That's our church. We want to live by faith. We want that to be an expression. We want to be this voice into this community. And but what today I want to talk about is our personal purpose. And this month, as we talk about this is a part of us in our personal purpose that we have, how we can, in this church, be a part of our personal purpose, right? So we know our personal purpose. We know that number one, the thing that Jesus said is we are to love God, right? The most important thing above all is to love God. And the second of this is to love others, correct? We know this, our purpose. You say, Pastor Russ, what is my purpose? Well, we all have the exact same purpose as Christians, to love God, to love others, and then in Matthew 28, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit later, is go make disciples. Okay? Some of the commands that we are. So our purpose is to love God, love others, and make disciples. And one of the greatest things that we have here that I love, I grew up in this, is our involvement of that purpose of going and making disciples. It is a great part that we can be a part of in the Assemblies of God, reaching out across this globe. I don't know about you, but me, I can't be all over the globe. I don't think I could live in Africa like Ben and Michelle. I don't think I could live in Alaska. I could live there, I think. Maybe. Yeah, be careful what I say. So, but see, we have missionaries that are everywhere on the globe. We have missionaries that you and I can talk to. We see their name, and you and I have missionaries in the Assemblies of God that you do not know their name. But we support them because they are in countries that are locked up. They are in countries that they are in the Live Dead movement, which we talked about a year ago at this time. Missionaries who said, I am called to this country, and this country will not let missionaries in or let the gospel in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in a backpack, and I'm going to hike into this country, and I'm going to go up to the mountains, and I'm going to share Jesus. And if I get caught and killed, send another. That was what we heard a year ago when we talked about this. We're a part of this. And our missions giving this year is looking fantastic. I'm excited about how much we have given in missions. And it looks like this year our goal was that we would come really close or surpass $100,000 in missions that we have given to missions. And it looks like right now we're going to hit that. And it's going to be awesome. Okay? I mean, it is amazing. And that we give so much to missions. But see, in the Assemblies of God, as we come together, we give together as a group. So like there's 345 plus Assembly of God churches in Washington and Northern Idaho. And we're called the Northwest Network. Now see, the deal is missions and missionaries all across, sending them out. If you were a missionary, how difficult would it be for you to say, hey, I'm going to go live in Africa. I need an income, right? So what you do is you go around and you visit a bunch of churches, and these churches say, hey, we'd love to help you go to Africa. So out of the churches, you can see maybe one church can give a large sum because they're a larger church, but then a smaller church say, hey, we want to simply give a smaller amount. But if a bunch of churches jump in, given a smaller amount, the next thing you know is you have a full salary to live in another country. And we are a part of that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Here at KCA, we right now, we support 37 missionaries around this globe that we are directly involved in their lives, and we give portions to each of them. And here at KCA, one of the easiest things to do is we encourage you to be involved in missions in giving. This is the part of go and make disciples. I can't go to Africa. I can't be in Spain or I can't be in all these spots. And I don't feel like I'm called to be there. And so what I do is I have friends who are. I have friends who are. I do have the Mans. They are in Africa. We have the Dunlaps. They are in Africa. They come directly from this church. We have great relation with them. They are called. They want to be in Africa. So what do? We help support them and put them on the field. Our involvement of making disciples across this planet, we are involved. And so when we give our regular tithe and offering, and then we give a little bit above, and we give that to missions, and we give that to projects around the church. But this month we're talking about giving to missions. And I personally want to encourage you, as you are giving, to give to missions, because it's a part of our value. It's a part of our purpose, is to go and make disciples. I can't be in parts of this world, but I can do this. I can give and be a part of that. And so I want to encourage you, through the month of November, we are going to be having some missionaries coming. We're having a brand new missionary. Him and his wife are coming in a couple of weeks, and he is an artist. And so during the midst of our worship, he's going to draw us a painting. And that's something I've never seen before. So I was talking to his wife, and she was bragging up on him, and I said, I want to see this. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to book you for November, and you're going to come up to our church and do this. And so I'm really excited to bring this young couple in. But we are involved in people's lives in this church, and this church reaches out around this globe. But also we want to talk about what we're doing here. Because as much as it is important to reach across this globe, to reach into another continent, it is the same as us reaching into our neighbor, right? And helping our neighbor. Now, you might not be able to go to a foreign country or another continent, but you can go to your neighbor. You can, at times when the church is saying, hey, there's an opportunity of ministry here, you can reach out and be a part of that. And you can help this church. And sometimes it's the simplest things of being a part of the local mission. Sometimes is serving in the local church. And you being a part of serving in the local church is very, very valuable. And from the ushers and the greeters to the people singing and leading us in worship to those that help us on this facility. We have so many of you that have helped us on this facility. It's amazing. And we together, as we are involved in our local giving, our local missions, and it is just fantastic. If you would, hopefully, maybe you had a chance to grab this little booklet that we have made, and it kind of gives part of our missions and what we're doing. If you kind of turn in a couple pages, you'll see our world impact, our community impact, and our church impact. And this booklet right here just kind of opens up some of the topics of what we do, how you can be involved, and some of the different things that we do in here at KCA. Right down to one of the pages is about our Wednesday night kids' life. One of the greatest things we can do is impact our community and impact our world. And so we came up with the theme, Global Impact. And our missions, when you go to give online, you'll see that there's regular tithe and offering, and then there's global impact. And so we have so many missionaries that we support here and things that we do in missions. You can just go to give your regular tithe and offering, and then you can go to global impact. You can click on global impact, and you can give directly to our global impact missions involvement. And monthly, we send out checks to the network. So one of the easiest ways to give is online. But also in the pew in front of you is a little envelope. And on that envelope, you'll see there's a spot for missions. And you can write on that. You can put your regular tithe and offering, put your missions on there, and you can write the amount out, how much you'd like to go to missions, and then you can put that in the offering as you walk out. And so at the end of service, what we do, instead of passing the plate and passing everybody COVID-19, we don't pass the plate, but what we do is we have the ushers in the, I'm sorry, I made fun of that. I shouldn't have made fun of that. In the back is the ushers, and they have the offering plate, and as you're walking out one of the doors, you can simply put that in there along with your connection card if you wanted to fill out that connection card. And then and that way that comes into the office. So let me explain how that money works. So when you give to Global Impact, you write a check or you give online to Global Impact. Global Impact goes into the church, our church checking account, and it's designated funds. And so we put that into our missions fund, our Global Impact Fund, and every month we as KCA write a check. And Dave takes all the money that's been given to missions, the money that's been designated. So let's say, for example, you have a personal friend. Maybe you were here years ago when Ben and Michelle were youth pastors here. Or maybe if you're kind of old as me almost, you could have been here when Mans were youth pastors here. Is that correct? They were pastors here. They were pastors here. Maybe you have friends, personal friends, that you know, or maybe it was a missionary that came and has spoken here, and you said, my heart linked with theirs, and I want to be involved in their life. And so I personally want to give those people so much money a month. Okay? So let's say you say, I want to give to missions. So you write your regular tithe and offering, and then you say, I want to be involved in missions. Now, I want to give to Global Impact because it's the 27 missionaries that we directly give. So I want to give some to that, but I'd also like to give some to my friend missionary. So what you can do is on that, you can write Global Impact, or you can just put missions and say, I want to put $25 to missions. And then I want to put $25 to my friend missionary who spoke a couple weeks ago, whom I fell in love with and my heart united with them. And I felt like I needed to personally be involved in their life, and I want to give directly to them. Or maybe you have already been a part of that, and you've been giving to missionaries and that you personally support, and you'd like to give that. You can just write their name on there. Then that money goes into the account, and then from there, Dave sees where that amount goes. So if you say, I personally want to give money to this missionary A, we already support missionary A as a church. So let's say as a missionary, we give them, let's say as a church, we sponsor them $75 a month. Let's just say that, or $100 a month. We say, we give them $100 a month. And then you say, I want to add personally, I want to add $25 to that. So what happens is we take all that money together and we send out a check at the end of the month, and that goes to their account directly in Springfield. And we send it to our national office, and our national office deposits it directly into their account. It is in their account, cash where their boots are. So it's not, and the amazing thing about that is my tithe as your pastor, I am an Assembly of God ordained minister, my tithe goes to the network. Okay, so I tithe directly to the network, the Northwest Network. Out of that tithe of all of us pastors, that's 1,400 pastors in Washington and Northern Idaho, a large portion of our tithe goes to the national office. So all across America, all of us Assembly of God pastors, we give, and it goes to help support the national office. So when you give, let's say you give $1 to missions, what happens? Many of the things that you give, you donate money to, especially help organizations, they have a large overhead. They have to pay the guys. You know, those guys fly all over the place. They go to the things. They have a large overhead. And sometimes there are organizations. I challenge you, if you give to an organization, I challenge you to get online and see if you give $1, how much of it makes it to boots on ground. And you're going to find out that when you give $1, 5 to 7, max usually 10 cents makes it to boots on ground. The 90 cents that you gave goes for to help the guys fly around, their salary, the office, the photocopier machine. Yeah, photocopier machines, how come are they so expensive? They always want a big lease, and ours is coming up. And I'm like, what? Anyway, I didn't say that out loud. It was going in my brain as I was saying that, though, I'm telling you. Okay, so here's the deal. They have a large overhead cost. In the Assemblies of God, when you give $1 to go to the boots on ground, 97 cents makes it to boots on ground. Right? So so our structure in Assemblies of God is that my tithe goes to the network in our area, and then our network ties to the national office, and the national office overhead is covered by our pastor's tithes. See how that works? And so what happens is that when you give to missions, when you give directly to global impact, that money is boots on ground. See the value of this? Okay, so I challenge you. If you give to, I'm not going to say it, but if you give to the Red Cross or United Way, you give something like that, I'm going to challenge you to go online and go look. Go look and see how much of your money is actually making it to boots on ground. Go look. Because those guys run advertising on the radio, on the television. They spend millions and millions of dollars in advertising. All right? I'm off the bandwagon. Hopefully. Okay? So, in missions, I want you to know this. There's a couple denominations that do missions phenomenal. Okay? Through the church, because they have the same format. It's about the dollars on ground. So when you give your money goes to the boots that are on ground. And that's very important, rather than other things that cost an overhead, right? And we all have overhead expenses. So the Assemblies of God, and there's quite a few other denominations that do it with the same amount of excellence. And so I challenge you to check into that. I challenge you to get online and see where you're giving in your global impact and see where your money is actually going. Again, so that's a great little booklet right here. So we here at KCA, today we want to spend some time on our local missions, things that we do around here. And so in about 2 seconds, I'm going to ask Kyle Strum to come up. And Kyle, has been working with us on staff here, and recently he has really been turning on some other things you can hear about. I don't want to spoil it. And but we do a lot of stuff local missions, local in our community, and effectively reaching this community. And so what we want to do is we want to highlight one of those, okay? In the booklet, it has quite a few in there, so if you want to read through those and how you can be involved, they're in the booklet. But today I want to highlight one of these of our local missions is with Kyle. So Kyle, Pastor Kyle, come on up and share with us this morning.
All right, thank you. Thanks for that highlight reel. That was kind of cool, seeing my family up there. That's always nice to see. Well, I want to kind of share with you guys the journey that I have been on. I was talking with Pastor Russ and Keaton yesterday. Yesterday was actually the 5-year anniversary of our whole family coming to Longview. And so 5 years ago yesterday, we were unloading a moving truck on Halloween Day. That we're trying to get it all done because they were coming back for trunk or treat that night. So we were like going as fast as we could, just throwing stuff in the house and dealing with it later. But yeah, 5 years we've been here. And just to give you a little background on us, we've kind of been moving all over the state of Washington. So Emily and I got married almost 14 years ago, and from our honeymoon, we went to Spokane, Washington. We were there for a little over a year to help with a church plant in Spokane, and that was like base level. We were there from the beginning, and through that whole season. During that time is when we got pregnant with JL, and out of that, there were some things that were going on with the church, but we left Spokane, went down to Vancouver, Washington to be closer to Emily's folks with the brand new baby, because at the time we were young, dumb kids and had no idea what we were doing. And so having parents around sounded like a good idea. So we went to Vancouver. We helped with another church plant in Vancouver. That church plant had been around for about 8-9 months or so when we joined, and we were there for about 5.5 years. And so started there. From that point on, I said, I will never do another church plant. I'm tired of it. I was so sick of setting up and tearing down every single Sunday. It was absolutely a nightmare. Having a building where you can just come in and turn the button on and it's ready to go, that's awesome. And so I said, I don't want to do church plants anymore. I'm going to move on and things will be great. We went from Vancouver back up to Seattle area, which is where I grew up, a part of a church up in that area. we were youth pastors there. We were in line to become the senior pastors there, and just some things that happened. We felt like we were supposed to be there. The ones making the decisions said otherwise, and so it was during that season where we were just trying to figure out what was happening, what was going on, and then I connected with Pastor Russ and Rhonda. And they said, you know what? We got a pretty cool little community down here in Longview. Why don't you come down, check it out? And Kelso, sorry, I'll make sure I include Kelso in that. And so it just worked out. I came down, been a part of the church now for 5 years. Thanks. That's cool. I'm excited about that. I'm glad you guys are too. That's great. And honestly, the first couple years that we were here, we were still battling the issues and the hurt that came out of that previous church. We felt involved in that church. We felt like we were going to take over, that we were going to be the lead pastors, and felt like God had set that up for us. And to have that be removed from our path, we felt kind of lost, to be honest. And so we came down here and just were kind of a little raw. Ever been in that spot before? Just felt raw. Felt like we were just trying to figure out and find our place, and started working here, fell in love, and then all of a sudden, God says, you know what, Kyle, you need to look at planting another church. And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to do that anymore, you silly goose. And God said, no, you are. And so we started this season of researching church plants. And as you know, most of you know, a little over 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, we launched our church in Kalama. And so during that season, we were doing a lot of research on what church plants looked like and how it was going to go about. And we decided that we were going to have kind of a more just a different model. And so we wanted to make sure discussion was heavily involved and make sure, just as KCA is, that discipleship was paramount in everything that we did, and that there was opportunity for conversation and for dialogue and for relationships to be built. And so we created this model where we had worship, we had a time where we could just sit around and have a discussion about the Word of God, and then we had dinner. And so every single Sunday night we'd meet, we'd have dinner. And I found out that as we started going, that really church started when I was done talking and people started eating. And we found that people really enjoyed. That's where the conversation started. That's where the relationships were made, was around the dinner table. And so we started praying about it some more, and God really shifted our hearts and kind of turned us on to this church planting model of a house church. And so over the last 2.5 years, we've shifted from more of a traditional church setting into a house church model. And so we meet every single week. We meet in someone's house. The cool thing about this is that right now we're on rotation, so we switch houses every single week. We just went through a series, it probably took us about a year, the book of Revelation. Now we're going through the book of Luke. And so it's really cool to be able to go through scripture week by week and really have conversation. And the cool thing about it is that we have different perspectives and different ways that we process information. And so to be able to come together and actually talk through that with one another helps me understand scripture in a whole new light. When you have different perspectives, it's a powerful thing. And that's why KCA has such amazing groups. And that's why it's important to be a part of groups, because that's what we do there. But with the house church, we have now come to a position where we've reached max capacity. And so I started asking God, what does this next step look like? And spent through this season of prayer, and throughout all of this, God came knocking again and said, hey, Kyle, guess what? I got something else for you. Don Ross, who's our network leader, the Northwest Ministry Network that Pastor Russ was just talking about, kind of contacted me. We had a conversation, and I just told him, I go, you know what, Don, I really feel like God is placing something on my heart for bivocational pastors. So my entire credentialed pastoral career, I have been bivocational. I work outside the church and then either volunteer or stipend or have a small income from the church, but the majority of my income comes from outside the church. And for the first probably, 10 or so years of that, I had a very unhealthy perspective of what being a bivocational pastor means. I felt that as a calling on my life to be a pastor meant that I needed to be a full-time pastor. And the fact that I wasn't a full-time pastor, I felt like I was not fulfilling that calling on my life. I felt substandard. I felt subpar. I felt like I was not a real pastor. That I felt like I was being torn apart. I was caught in between. I was trying to devote time to work so I could provide for my family, and I was trying to spend time in the church, and I felt like I was being torn apart. And it was all because, again, coming back to perspective. And during this season, I'll tell you, being here at KCA has been amazing for Emily and I in how we have processed out of the different seasons we've been in, and understanding that there was some unhealthy thought processes and some just hurt that we had to go through. And we found a lot of healing here, which is a side note. But anyway, so I felt at that point when I had kind of this moment and understanding with God a couple years ago that it's okay to be a bivocational pastor, that you're still a pastor. I'm still loving on people. And in fact, there's opportunity being a bivocational pastor so that I can talk to people in the workplace about Jesus, and that I have an opportunity outside of the church on a daily basis to impact people. And that's an opportunity for me to love on people. It's an opportunity for me to share with them. It's an opportunity for me to encourage them. And there is nothing subpar or substandard about that at all. And once I realized that, I just felt this release. I felt like this, man, I can do this. And it was at that point where I realized that really my calling is to be a bivocational pastor. It's not being a full-time vocational pastor. And in that, I felt this freedom to fully explore that. So I had this conversation with Don Ross, and I said, you know what? I feel like there are a lot of pastors in our network that find themselves in a similar situation that I have found myself, where they feel not connected to the network. I was working all the time, so I couldn't go to the network events. I couldn't go to network conference, which is a highlight of being a pastor in our network. I wasn't connected, and I felt like I was kind of left out. I felt like everybody else was hanging inside the house, and I'm outside in the rain just kind of knocking on the window. Will somebody let me in? You know, poor Kyle, right? Come on. Anyway, and so I had a conversation with him. I was like, I am passionate about this. I do not want people that are bivocational to feel left out. I want them to feel connected. I want them to feel resourced. I want to develop a community specifically for these pastors so that they feel connected to all the great things this network has for them. So we started dreaming. We started talking. We changed it to marketplace pastors. Kind of changed that name because we work in the marketplace. We're marketplace pastors. So we have relaunched this marketplace pastor campaign within the Assemblies of God Northwest Ministry Network that I am overseeing as the coordinator. So all 270 plus pastors that are considered bivocational or marketplace pastors are now having a community that they can come around and be a part of and feel encouraged, feel lifted up, feel connected, feel resourced. And it has been phenomenal for me to be able to have these relationships and develop these relationships with these pastors, to pray with them, to reach out to them, to encourage them, to offer them that support, give them books that I've read. This has been a truly incredible season for us over really the last probably 9 months. I mean, this year in 2020, this has all come about. And then God said, you know what, there's something else that we need to talk about too. And I go, you know, I'm really tired of you telling me I need to do stuff. But he keeps like tapping on my shoulder. And so out of this, as I kind of started going through this marketplace pastor coordinator position and started reaching out to these pastors, more doors have opened up. And getting back to the house church that we started, I mentioned we've reached max capacity within that. And so part of my prayer has been, God, now what does this look like? How do we replicate? Because I'll be honest, the people that come to our church, they don't want to start this on by themselves. They don't want to go and start another group. They want to stay with our group, which is awesome. I love that. I love that we have developed this community. Some of them are complete introverts. And over the last 2 years, they have totally opened up. In fact, this series that we're doing on Luke is being led not by me, but by somebody else in the church who is your classic introvert. And he's stepping up. He's sending out like questions to talk about for tonight and every single week and all. It's awesome. It's awesome to see them grow and develop. But how do we replicate this? And then Josh Hebert is a pastor in our network. He's in charge of church multiplication, so church plants within the Assemblies of God Northwest Ministry Network. Reached out to me and said, hey, we have a growing number of pastors that are interested in starting house churches. Because you have done this and have been doing it for the last couple of years, would you like to help coach them and lead them and teach them how to do it effectively? And I started thinking, man, this is a great opportunity for us to replicate. It may not be specifically in Kalama or Southwest Washington or Longview, Kelso, or Cowlitz County, but it's an opportunity for us to replicate throughout all of the Northwest and help these pastors that are marketplace pastors that need to have full-time income outside of the church to find their calling, to embrace their calling, to own that calling, and to love people. So that has launched this new initiative, too, to add to all that, where I'm helping these church planters launch house churches. And one of the verses that jumped out at me as we were kind of developing this idea of a house church is in Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. I'll read it for you real quick. It says, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. So this is the calling of Matthew. Jesus says, follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, this is the very next verse. So he goes to Matthew and says, follow me. And the very next verse, verse 10, he says, while Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When you look at other translations, it says that Jesus is reclining at the table with tax collectors and sinners. And it gives off this idea of them meeting in this house. I guarantee you they're having church. You can't sit and talk to Jesus without talking about Jesus, right? So they're having church in this house. This is a beautiful example of what that looks like. And so now we are going out and we are replicating what we're trying to do or what we have done across the entire Northwest, telling people how to lead a house church. You don't have to be a pastor to lead a house church. You just have to be willing to be used by God. One of the other things that we're starting to develop now, and this is where you could be praying for us, God also placed something on my heart. Again, man, I'm tired of him tapping on my shoulders. I'm not. I love it. But I had this idea. There are so many people out there that are willing to talk to others about Jesus, but don't have the tools to do it. They don't know how to do it. When it comes to a house church, they like the idea. They feel even a leading of the Holy Spirit to do that, but they don't know how to do it. So we have started a communication. This is early stages, and we're calling it, it's a working title. It's called the Digital Reformation. I thought about Martin Luther, and I thought about the Reformation in the 1500s and what he had done to completely change the landscape of church in that time. And in light of COVID, with everything that's going on with online, and utilizing technology, I thought, man, we need another reformation. We need a digital reformation. And so I'm in the process now of working with other pastors to collaborate and create essentially a website, a one-stop shop where all of these leaders and these pastors that want to start these house churches can go for resources, can go for, whether it's sermons and sermon series that they can share or they can learn from or they can teach from, but a one-stop shop where they can network, they can connect, they can be resourced and equipped to go and establish these house churches all throughout the Northwest. There are a lot of people that are doing this. This is a very common thread that's going on right now across our nation, especially in Washington. And I think it is so cool that we get to be a part of this. Now, with all that said, with everything that's going on, what that has led to is God also shifting focus a little bit in our family. And what that means is we have officially stepped down from leadership on KCA to focus on these different areas that God has led us to. But that doesn't mean that we're not here. We're still going to be here. I think I'm playing bass next Sunday. I'm still preaching, whenever Pastor Russ wants me to. This is our home church. This is where we're going to be. But I wanted to share with you what God has done with us really over 2020. And it's interesting to see how looking back in our life, and I shared our kind of backstory just to come back and show you how you never know what God is going to do in your life in the current season you're in. But can I just tell you and just encourage you that wherever you are right now, God will use that situation. He will use your circumstances for the good down the road. I'm telling you that right now. I think back to Moses. Moses, if you remember his story in Exodus, he goes and he kills an Egyptian because he was beaten on a Jewish slave at the time, and he runs and flees out of fear because he killed an Egyptian. For the next 40 years, he finds himself living in the desert. He gets married. He's working for his father-in-law. He becomes a shepherd. For 40 years, he's learned how to survive in the desert. I guarantee you he did not enjoy that, right? That was not what he thought. He grew up as a prince of Egypt. If you ever saw the movie, you know what I'm talking about, okay? Cartoons are awesome. He finds himself for 40 years living in the desert, and then God tells him to go back and set his people free. And he goes back, sets the people free, and then what does he do? He wanders around for another 40 years living in the desert with all of the Israelites, millions of people. I'm telling you right now, when he was in the desert for 40 years the first time, did not think he would be leading these people in the desert for 40 years the second time. But how much more qualified was he to lead them in the desert for 40 years after having done it for already doing it for 40 years? You do not know what God has in store for you. Whatever season you're in, whatever situation you're facing, whatever circumstance you're in right now, know that God will use that for the future. And it won't ever look like you want it to look. I did not want to plant another church. I did not want to plant a house church. I didn't even really know what that was about. And here we are, we're doing this. We're helping other people plant house churches. We are impacting not just our community, but the entire Northwest. And this is what we get to be a part of. This is what we get to be involved with. This is the greater scope of the kingdom of God being advanced in our communities on a daily basis. This is what it's all about. And our mission, just like the mission of KCA, just like the mission of the Assemblies of God, is to love God, to love people, and to go and make disciples. This is what we're all about. And I am so excited to share this with you. This is something that God has birthed in me. It is a passion of mine. I absolutely love teaching and coaching. I mean, I am a 2-time state champion coach. And so, you know, I mean, I know something about coaching. And I'm sorry. I love to see what God is doing. And God is doing amazing things. And sometimes we can come in and we can sit in here on a Sunday morning and we'd be so caught up and so focused on what's going on in our lives. It's cool to understand perspective of that bigger picture of what's going on out there. God is doing amazing things, not just in our community, but around the world. And we get to be a part of that. How awesome is that? You don't have to be boots on the ground, but you can be a part of prayer. You can be a part of financially giving. You get to be a part of encouraging others. It's amazing. God is up there and he is moving people around and he is shifting them to the right spots that they can have the most impact so that none can perish, but that everyone can come to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And that's why we do this. That's why we do this. So I wanted to give you guys an update of what God has done in our lives in this crazy 2020. And I'll tell you, for all the craziness that's happened this year, this has been one of the greatest years for our family. God is amazing, and he's doing incredible things. And I get fired up about it. I get passionate. And I think we all need to be passionate for God because he was passionate for us when he stood up on that cross. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I thank you so much for today. Father God, I thank you for what you are doing both here and beyond. Father, I pray for all those pastors that are stepping out into the unknown and pursuing church plants, pursuing not just a traditional church style or model, but a house church model. God, I pray that you continue to pour out resources. I pray that you continue to pour out your love and support. I pray that your Holy Spirit would be a part of every single step in that process so that they can feel loved and equipped and connected and supported. God, I pray for all these marketplace pastors that are out there that feel disconnected, that feel like they are struggling between work-life balance and their home and their ministry. But God, that they can understand that you have put them in that place for a reason. And whether it's a short season or a long season or forever, God, you know that you are going to impact their lives. You're going to use them to impact others. And I pray that they would find solace in that. They'd find peace in that they'd find empowerment in that, and that they'd be able to go out and to love others like you love people. Father, I thank you for KCA. I thank you for this amazing church. I thank you, Lord God, that even as leadership may change over the years, you have brought other leaders in place. I thank you for the leadership that is here, that is respondent and listens to the Holy Spirit, that moves according to the flow of the Holy Spirit. And God, I pray that KCA would continue to be a catalyst in this community, that Southwest Washington, we can look as KCA as a beacon of light in this area. And God, I pray that more and more people would go out from here and impact others and love people, love God, and make disciples. Jesus, we thank you for what you're doing. We're excited to see you accomplish your goals. And we thank you for who you are. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kyle. We love you, man. Kyle doesn't know, but he's already on the schedule in January.